It was at the powerhouse in London. It's until one night they went into the club and they found some rough, tough old guys there. And I was one of them. And I'm proud to say I was one of them.
Hayward's gang inadvertently did the police a good turn. The Richardsons were effectively off the streets. Eddie got 5 years for a fray along with Frankie Fraser. It was a major break for Jerry MacArthur, the Assistant Chief Constable of Hertfordshire. Within a year, he'd had them all in the dock. He was starting to accumulate the evidence he needed.
It was in October of 1965 that a man named Taggart came out to see me because he was frightened for his life.
Jimmy Taggart, a long-firm fraudster, went to Hertfordshire police because he feared word would get back to Charlie if he went to the Met. Taggart told MacArthur Charlie Richardson and his men had taken him to this yard in Rotherhithe. He was then subjected to a 5-hour beating in order to collect a £1,200 debt.
He was obviously a man petrified. He was virtually shivering when he was speaking to me. He was terrified. And I wanted to take a statement from him, a written statement, but he wouldn't give me that statement. He said he was frightened that maybe the Richardsons somehow or other would get to know about it and he'd be in trouble again.
Taggart told MacArthur about other victims of the Richardsons' violence. Eventually, they struck a deal. Taggart would make a full statement but not sign it until Charlie Richardson and his gang were under arrest.
All right, Mr. Taggart, if you'd like to take a seat, we'll get started.
If MacArthur could not bring them to trial, then this statement and others he'd collected would be destroyed.
Put down whenever you think is right. Tell me anything you need to know.
Can I just hear you?
Yes, right at the top.
Okay. Immediately on getting into the office, I was thrown to the floor and the three of them began kicking me. They were swearing at me. Then my clothing was pulled from me and I was left lying on the floor completely nude. It's difficult to remember the sequence of events, but I can remember Fraser hitting me on the head with a pole about 2 inches in diameter, which broke in two. I was thrashed with ropes and hit on the head with a pair of pliers. While Fraser was attacking me with these objects, the others were kicking and punching me.
Copy, Mr. Taggart?
MacArthur had originally planned to jail the Richardsons for their long-firm frauds and extortion, but as Taggart's statement unfolded, he realised it would be easier to convict the gang on their crimes of violence.
I can remember sitting on a chair on one occasion and seeing my reflection in a window and realising how bad I looked, and this made me more determined than ever not to become unconscious, as I thought if I did they would finish the job and kill me. These beatings happened in spasms. On some occasions I was made to wipe up my own blood which was on the walls and floor with a rag they gave me. Fraser's attitude was that I would be dangerous to release and they should finish the job off and kill me.
What's your version of what happened to Jimmy Taggart? He didn't get touched. Did you break a wooden pole over his head, hitting him so hard with it? Complete rubbish. Absolute rubbish. Was he beaten up, kicked in the testicles, tied to a chair? Quoting his own evidence, after all this happened to him, this is his evidence, not mine, he drove home. He never went to hospital to have it x-rayed, the so-called fault fractured skull. Any other injuries, there was no record of them. And he never went to the police, the doctor about them, or anything. I think the doctor was a complete sham. I don't think he existed.
His body was one mass of black and blue bruises. Hardly any space between one bruise and another, overlapping each other in actual fact. And his back was all like stripes of black and blue, all very close together, just lines going down like that. And down below, his testicles and his groin was all, you know, like a ball, a rubber ball, the size of a rubber ball.
Dr. McCallum saw Jimmy Taggart as he hid in a friend's house in North London a few days after his beating. He was a key prosecution witness at the main trial of Charlie Richardson and the rest of his gang at the Old Bailey. He vividly remembers Taggart's condition.
I saw him in bed, lying spread-eagled. I was horrified at what appeared to me was a grotesque figure, all blown up, face all swollen, black and blue all over. He must have had a terrific beating, and an expert beating at that. He was grotesque, literally grotesque, but there were no actual serious injuries. And this was the incredible thing about it.
The police began to realise there was a link between the fraudulent companies and the violence. The aim of the horrific beatings was to make sure none of the frontmen in the long-firm frauds dared to name Charlie in court. The main architect of the frauds was Jack Duval. He built a pyramid of shady companies that kept money rolling in. But this brilliant con man went too far. He conned Charlie too.
Jack knew him for what he was, and he still conned him. Charlie would just not take that. He'd give you money, but he didn't like being conned for it. If you went down to Charlie and said, look, Charlie, I'm in shit, I need £100. What for, Johnny? Well, I'm in trouble with the police. Here's 100, I want it back. But to be conned, he just couldn't take that. It's got a reputation to keep up. Now, people know he's been conned and he does nothing about it. Then they all start taking liberties. So he had to put his foot down every time on it.
Jack Duval vanished abroad when he knew the game was up. One by one, Charlie pulled in Duval's associates to find out where he was. Among those summoned to his Camberwell office was a man called Bunny Bridges.
Bridges gets a message. He comes down the yard, but he doesn't dream what was going on. I mean, he'd done no wrong to Charlie, as far as we knew. And he came in and he got a smack in there, and Charlie said to him, where is Jack Duval? So Bunny said, well, I don't know. What do you want him for? So Charlie said, well, he owes me thousands. And Bunny said, no, he hasn't seen him. Charlie sits behind a desk, just sort of sitting there like the Lord, and he carry on till Charlie said, take him upstairs and make him tell him where Jack Duval is. So we took him up above the scrapyard. You've got some offices up there what was used. We fucked him about a bit, gave him a few smacks. Then we had what we called a torture box here. There's an old field telephone. We slung Bunny in a bath of water, cold cuts, and then started putting the wires on him and turning the handle, and he was screaming blue murder, about the pain that was going through him. You put the wires wherever you're going to put them, on his brick or on his balls or whatever you're going to put them, on his nipples, and turn the handle. And the cold water doubles the strength of the shock that goes through you.
What was his reaction?
Well, he jumped about 4 foot in the bloody air out the bath, screaming and shouting, and you give him another hold, then we tied a piece of cloth around his mouth to keep him quiet. Just carried on with the handle and that. And you could see that he didn't know nothing. I mean, he would have told us, it's obvious, he couldn't take that all the time. I think you could honestly say 9 times out of 10, they didn't know nothing what was going on in the first place. They really got tortured for fuck all. Like Bridges, he didn't know nothing about Duval's business.
If you knew that and you knew it at the time, why didn't you say, no, we're not going to take him upstairs?
No, it's not a thing. You've got orders to do, you do it. Otherwise you're liable to wind up on the torture box as well if you don't say no to Charlie.
These unspeakable acts are impossible to justify. For the police, the victims weren't ideal witnesses to put before a jury because they tended to be criminals. But MacArthur couldn't afford to wait. He was worried that the violence would escalate.
They would put it that they were a threat only to the underworld. But in reality, they're a threat to the public because they become power mad.